Would you pay 500 Rand for a single drink? Maybe a glass of very fancy French champagne. Maybe a tot of whiskey, very old. I don't know. I wouldn't. But I'm pretty sure most of us, if not all of us, would draw the line at paying that amount just for an energy drink. But such is the nature of teenage hype on social media that Prime, a sports drink launched by YouTube sensations Logan Paul and KSI last year, has left youngsters desperate to get their hands on the coolest drink in town. Of course, just recently it came to South Africa. And as we've seen across the world, kids are going crazy for it. It's a fascinating lesson in the power of social media and just how many young people want to be associated with social media stars. Let's discuss this now with Sarah Hoffman. She's a family digital safety expert. She's also co-founder of the group Klikd. All right, so Sarah, this is fascinating. And I understand it was launched in January 2022. And if you look at the original launch price, it wasn't astronomical. It was around South African equivalent of sort of 40 Rand. My understanding is that this high price has actually come from the massive demand from many, many youngsters, and then the, I suppose, on-selling and capitalizing on a product that's in demand.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Sally. It's lovely to be with you. And I think what we really need to understand about this product is the huge hype around it has very, very little to do with the product itself and everything to do with the cult and community built around it, as well as some basic principles of economics, supply and demand, which you've alluded to, and some really, really, really smart marketing. But absolutely correct in saying that the price has soared absolutely tremendously since its launch, to some extraordinary numbers now. I mean, I just had a look before the show and I saw some prices on Takealot at almost 600 Rand for one single drink, which just seems absolutely ludicrous. And it seems to be an international trend that there's been a created scarcity to really hype up the demand amongst our teens to get their hands on just one bottle of this energy drink, which, from my understanding, really is no different. It does not contain gold leaf or anything valuable. It really is an energy drink like any other, filled with aspartame or sugar, stimulants, caffeine, and the like.
So let's look at the two stars behind it. Logan Paul has got 23 and counting million followers. KSI, he's got about 24 million followers. These are massive YouTube stars. Tell us more about them and why do you think they're so incredibly popular?
So I think a number of things, Sally. So it's really interesting, actually. They both have backgrounds in wrestling. So Logan Paul actually started off his career on something called Vine, and he slowly transitioned into creating YouTube videos, more sort of comedic, a more comedic nature. And he, what's really interesting about him when we talk about this specific drink is he actually was cancelled a while ago because he leveraged his fame to exploit someone else's suicide on one of his videos, and he made this whole video about somebody else's suicide, which really did result in a big sort of wave of cancel culture against him, and he seems to have made this massive comeback from this. He has, as you said, an absolutely enormous following, and it really is an extraordinary example of teen hype, teen following. You know, I think for our teens, people that have created careers out of being YouTube influencers, which both KSI and Logan Paul have done, they really are seen as iconic in our teens' eyes because they've really leveraged this platform for huge, huge financial gain. But the question around his, you know, kind of shady ethics at times really calls to question, you know, I don't even think for 1 second our teens are stopping to think, who is this person that we're so obsessed with? Why are we so hell-bent on getting our hands on one of these drinks? They're totally separating, in some ways, really important aspects of the person behind the brand with the brand. And then in terms of KSI, also, he's got a background in boxing. He also actually started his career as doing commentary on YouTube, on FIFA gaming over YouTube. And his popularity has really, really grown tremendously. I think what the two of them do really, really well in terms of YouTube influencers is they've got incredibly high engagement rates. And that means they really, really have created a community. They engage with their community. They share their own personal lives. They engage, they create interactive opportunities for their audience all the time. And they've really, really succeeded in creating an absolutely tremendous hype around this product. It's really fascinating.
Yeah, it is. I suspect there's also a consumer story into, I mean, it looks to me like almost like price gouging. There's such a massive demand. I think the product was launched in South Africa only in April this year, which is why we're seeing like 475 Rand for a bottle. But the source price is not that high. But it just shows you what supply and demand can do. It's fascinating, these two young men. You mentioned with Logan Paul how he was cancelled about the so-called suicide forest in Japan, where tragically these youngsters apparently go into a specific forest to commit suicide, and they leave their shoes. It's just quite a murky, crazy world that our youngsters are having to navigate. And I didn't know any of this until I started speaking to a couple of teenagers in my life. What is the lesson for parents? I mean, obviously, most of us are going to say, don't be ridiculous. I'm not buying that for you. You can spend your pocket money. But for me, there's a deeper lesson around really getting what moves and motivates our youngsters.
I think that's absolutely, but whenever we speak to parents and teens about the social media world, and when it really is a minefield for parents. Our number one lesson for parents is that, as absolutely crazy as all of this sounds, and I mean, really on the face of it, 500 Rand for an energy drink seems absolutely ludicrous to all of us, but for some reason it's meaningful to our teens. And so whenever we speak to parents, we say, when we talk to our kids about their online world, we go in with curiosity, and genuine empathy, and not judgment, finger wagging, and disdain, because that is how we maintain connection, when otherwise we are permanently disconnected from them because of these screens that they are glued to for so many hours of the day. And so I think the lesson really is, use this as a conversation starter, use this as an opportunity to try and understand what's driving our kids, and also to question why certain people are followed. I mean, I had an interesting thought. If Thabo Bester was to launch an energy drink tomorrow, would this have the same absolute groundswell response? And so I think it is important also to talk to our teens about really thinking a little bit more deeply about the people they follow, the content they're seeing online. But above all, talk to your teens about their online world. It really is the most important line of defense against any of these really strange, somewhat worrying online scenarios our children keep coming up against.
Yeah, absolutely. And if any parents are wondering what's actually in it, my understanding, obviously there's an energy drink that's got lots of sugar and caffeine, but there's a version that's essentially distilled water, 10% coconut juice, and a bit of amino acids. I mean, it just sounds like a complete and utter rip-off. But I suppose if you want to be the coolest kid in town and get that social acumen, maybe it's worth it for some. Thank you so much for speaking to us this evening. Fascinating, actually. Sarah Hoffman, family digital safety expert and co-founder of Klikd, telling us all about the very expensive Prime drinks.